Have you ever stood, stunned, looking at the wreckage of your choices and wondered, how did I end up here again? The scenery might shift, the job, the relationship, the impulsive decision, but beneath the surface, it's always the same story, isn't it? Same plot twist, same sinking feeling, same bitter regret. Consider for a moment the paradox of your own consciousness. You are intelligent, self-aware, equipped with wisdom and insight. Yet, astonishingly, you find yourself circling back to the very same pits of failure. We label these repetitions mistakes, but perhaps a more precise description would be rituals, unconscious ceremonies we perform, strangely comforted by their predictability. Think about it. On the surface, you condemn your repetitive failures. Yet, deep within your subconscious mind, aren't you drawn, almost magnetically, back to these patterns? Could it be that, paradoxically, a part of you prefers the pain of familiar disappointment over the discomfort of genuine change? Let's unmask this uncomfortable truth. Each repeated mistake is a carefully crafted illusion, a drama you subconsciously direct, produce, and star in. Yes, even the most painful scenes you lament are, in their twisted way, a form of art. Self-sabotage is the theater of the mind, and we become tragically brilliant playwrights, rehearsing our lines diligently, ensuring we get them wrong perfectly each time. But why would we ever choose pain over growth, failure over freedom? The answer lies in the unsettling complexity of your inner world. Familiarity, even when toxic, feels safe. Repetition, even destructive, creates a soothing rhythm. Consider the irony. Our brains, sophisticated marvels capable of staggering innovation and evolution, often prefer stagnation. Neural pathways shaped by habit are powerful, deeply grooved highways of ease. Stepping off these beaten paths into the wild unknown of genuine transformation demands courage, clarity, and ruthless honesty. This is where most falter. Instead of facing the discomfort head-on, we craft elaborate justifications, spinning stories to soften the harshness of reality. It's never entirely our fault, right? Circumstances conspired against us. The timing wasn't right. The other person misunderstood our intentions. Excuses are comforting whispers, quieting the restless inner critic demanding accountability. But in silencing criticism, we also mute wisdom. Yet, deep down, beneath these comforting lies, a truth waits patiently, unacknowledged but unwavering. The more we run from responsibility, the tighter the grip of our repetitive mistakes becomes. This is the profound paradox of self-deception. The more cleverly you justify your errors, the more enslaved by them you become. Imagine, vividly, your most recent repeated mistake. Replay the scenes, linger in the feelings. What subtle signals did you ignore? What rationalizations did you invent? At some point, the truth whispered softly to you, didn't it? A quiet voice urging caution. Yet despite that inner guidance, you walked willingly into the trap. Ask yourself this haunting question. Who am I really deceiving? Certainly not your deeper self, that wise inner observer, silently watching your drama unfold. It knows every trick, every excuse, every comforting lie. The only one deceived is your surface identity, your carefully curated persona that refuses to face uncomfortable truths. But the good news is, paradoxically, contained within this self-awareness. Your greatest mistake is also your clearest mirror. Each repeated failure reveals a hidden facet of yourself, reflecting back your most stubborn patterns, your unmet needs, your deepest fears. The repetition continues precisely because you refuse to gaze into that mirror honestly and steadily. Each avoidance distorts the reflection further, until it becomes grotesque and unbearable, urging you toward distraction. Now imagine breaking this illusion. Imagine just for a moment, confronting the uncomfortable reality head-on, stepping boldly toward the mirror rather than shrinking away. What would happen if, instead of flinching, You stare deep into your self-deception, accepting it without judgment, but also without excuse. You'd experience something profound, an almost physical sensation of freedom. Facing the raw truth shatters the cycles of repetition. The chains forged by denial and excuses snap instantly when illuminated by ruthless honesty. The familiar landscapes of your mistakes suddenly feel less comfortable, less inviting. This is the paradoxical wisdom hidden within repetitive failure. Every return trip, every loop around the same tired cycle nudges you closer to an essential realization. You are not doomed to this path. You walk it because you fear the unknown more than you loathe the pain. But what if, in a twist of poetic irony, the unknown held not horror, but liberation? Visualize clearly this moment of liberation. How would it feel to finally break free from the self-imposed prisons of repetition? To transcend the futile, frustrating loop? To step forward not into comfortable lies, but into an exhilarating, uncertain truth? It begins here, right now, in this very awareness, the quiet internal acknowledgement that your repetitive mistakes are not random curses, but cleverly constructed prisons designed by none other than yourself. In the sections ahead, we'll delve deeply into these psychological intricacies. We'll unravel the hidden motivations behind your repetitive behaviors, illuminate the unseen consequences of your self-deception, and most importantly, chart a practical, tangible course toward lasting liberation. But first, ponder deeply on this unsettling yet liberating truth. Your repeated mistakes are not unfortunate accidents, but purposeful rituals of self-deception. Recognizing and owning this reality is the first essential step toward genuine change. Before we proceed, ask yourself candidly, am I ready to stop deceiving myself? Because true transformation demands more than desire. It requires courage, clarity, and an uncompromising embrace of the truth, however uncomfortable. Are you ready to face your reflection? The journey begins now. Why do you think your mistakes keep resurfacing? Is it mere coincidence, bad luck, or perhaps a cosmic joke at your expense? Of course not. Beneath the surface repetition lies something profound, invisible, and deeply rooted. To break the cycle of self-sabotage, you must venture deep into the shadowy corridors of your unconscious mind, unearthing hidden motivations that drive your repeated errors. Imagine your psyche as a complex labyrinth, filled with secret doors and hidden passageways. At first glance, it seems orderly, controlled, a place of reason and self-awareness. Yet, beneath this polished exterior lurk subconscious forces far more powerful than your rational intentions. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Are you not, in fact, living out this very prophecy every time you repeat your mistakes? Consider carefully. What if your repeated mistakes are not errors at all, but coded messages from your unconscious? What if each cycle you despise is actually your deeper self urgently communicating, begging to be understood? Your conscious mind dismisses these repetitions as frustrating inconveniences, yet your unconscious perceives them as critical revelations. Dig deeper. What lies beneath the surface behavior you so readily dismiss as a mere lapse in judgment or momentary weakness? Why do you keep texting that toxic ex, overspending on things you don't need, or procrastinating despite knowing better? Is it simply a lack of discipline, or something far more profound? The painful truth is that many of your repeated mistakes mask deeper emotional wounds or unmet psychological needs. Perhaps beneath impulsive spending hides an unspoken insecurity, a longing to feel worthy or seen. Behind procrastination might lie a paralyzing fear of failure, a belief that avoiding action altogether somehow protects you from disappointment. Or maybe toxic relationships replay past traumas, allowing you to relive familiar pain in the hope of finally rewriting a painful history. These deeper motivations aren't weaknesses. They're unresolved emotional puzzles begging for your attention. Every repeated mistake serves as a clue, a trail of breadcrumbs leading you back to wounds still raw and unmet emotional needs left unattended. Pause and ask yourself, have you ever truly explored what deeper wounds lie beneath your recurring errors? Or have you been too quick to dismiss them as trivial annoyances or lapses in willpower? Here's the uncomfortable reality. Until you confront the hidden emotional or psychological needs driving these mistakes, you're destined to keep reliving them. It's like living within a haunted house, endlessly running from ghosts you refuse to face. But what if those ghosts aren't malicious spirits at all, but forgotten aspects of yourself seeking acknowledgement? Now consider the role fear plays in perpetuating your cycles. The human mind craves certainty, even if that certainty involves pain or disappointment. Change represents uncertainty, and uncertainty terrifies us. Paradoxically, repeating mistakes, even painful ones, offers a twisted form of stability. You know exactly how the story ends, and predictability feels oddly comforting, even when destructive.
Thus, your self-sabotage emerges as a misguided act of self-preservation. A deeper part of you believes that the discomfort of familiar failure remains safer than the unknown territory of genuine transformation. Isn't it ironic, then, that the very fear that keeps you trapped claims to protect you? Nietzsche captured this beautifully when he wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Perhaps the hidden root of your repeated mistakes is precisely the absence of that powerful, clarifying why. Without confronting your deeper motivations, you'll always lack the internal compass needed to navigate toward meaningful change. Yet consider this: understanding these hidden motivations doesn't make you weak. It empowers you. When you acknowledge and understand the deeper emotional drives beneath your mistakes, you strip away their unconscious power. Suddenly, the impulse to overspend, text a toxic person, or procrastinate becomes less compulsive, less automatic. You see clearly what you're really chasing: validation, security, acceptance, and can consciously pursue these needs in healthier ways. However, confronting these hidden truths requires bravery and humility. You must be willing to see yourself clearly, not as you'd prefer to be, but as you truly are, complete with imperfections, vulnerabilities, and unmet emotional needs. Picture vividly the emotional wound at the root of your most frequent mistake. Perhaps it's a childhood fear of abandonment, manifesting in clingy relationships. Maybe it's shame around worthiness, fueling impulsive spending, or perfectionist procrastination. Visualize this wound clearly, not to judge it, but simply to acknowledge and understand. This simple act of honest witnessing begins to dissolve the subconscious chains binding you to repetitive behaviors. But acknowledgement alone isn't enough. After identifying these emotional triggers, you must actively rewrite your internal narrative. What once felt inevitable, a cycle of predictable, painful mistakes, can become a conscious choice. You can replace automatic destructive behaviors with intentional, healthier ones. You transform repetition into resolution, habit into deliberate choice. To break your cycle, begin by facing a single, uncomfortable truth. Your repeated mistakes are never accidental. They're purposeful signals from your subconscious, messages urging attention and understanding. By acknowledging these deeper motivations, you reclaim your power, turning unconscious repetition into conscious evolution. Let yourself linger on this empowering realization. Your repeated mistakes are not mere flaws. They are opportunities. Each recurrence offers profound insight into your hidden emotional landscape, illuminating exactly where healing and growth are most urgently needed. As you move forward, consider carefully, are you ready to courageously explore the hidden roots of your repetitive failures, transforming them into catalysts for genuine change? Because genuine transformation demands not just awareness, but the brave willingness to confront yourself fully, shadows and all. Are you prepared to embrace this deeper journey toward liberation? Because the next steps will demand nothing less than absolute honesty, fearless introspection, and a radical redefinition of your relationship with mistakes. If you're ready, the path toward freedom continues right now. At first, the consequences seem small. You brush them off. A late reply, a missed opportunity, another conversation left unresolved. Next time, you whisper to yourself. But what happens when next time becomes never? What happens when your repeated mistakes stop being events and start becoming your life? Here's a truth most people never face. The cost of unconscious repetition is not just inconvenience, it's erosion. Slow, subtle, devastating erosion. You don't wake up one morning shattered by a single mistake. You wake up hollow, having given yourself away piece by piece over months, years, maybe even decades. And the scariest part? You won't always notice it happening. You'll still laugh at the right jokes. You'll keep up with the texts, maybe hit your deadlines, maybe even smile in pictures. But something inside will start to dim. A quiet knowing, a slow, internal nod that says, I keep doing this to myself. Repetition, when unconscious, rewires your identity. Every time you betray your own growth by making the same mistake, avoiding the same truth, or tolerating the same pain, you reinforce the belief that this is who you are. And who are you, exactly? Are you someone who settles for half love because full love feels too risky? Are you someone who starts strong, then always disappears just before things get real? Are you someone who keeps saying, I'll change, but only after the next disaster? Let's be honest. Every time you repeat a mistake, you're not just shaping your habits, you're writing your self-story. Not in bold declarations, but in the quiet decisions you make when no one's watching. And those stories? They compound. One repeated mistake becomes a pattern. That pattern becomes a personality. And that personality becomes a prison. It's how a person wakes up 10 years later in a life they don't recognize, wondering how they got here. Let's make this even more real. Imagine a woman who always chooses emotionally unavailable partners. She tells herself it's bad luck, or that chemistry is just unpredictable. But beneath the surface, she's repeating a childhood script where love was earned through effort, silence, or sacrifice. Each new relationship feels familiar, and every ending feels inevitable. One day, she stops believing in love entirely, not because it doesn't exist, but because her repetition has rewritten her sense of what love even is. Or picture the man who dreams of launching a business. He studies, plans, even builds a prototype, but every time it's time to launch, he self-sabotages, convinced he's not ready. Deep down, he believes failure will confirm a secret shame that he's not good enough. So he avoids risk, plays it safe, and watches years slip by as others dare to leap. This isn't just about romance or careers. It's about how repetition kills possibility. Because the longer you make the same mistake, the more you lose access to who you could have been. Your potential doesn't just die in one big moment. It fades in silence, drowned in the white noise of your own excuses. Ask yourself, What has your most repeated mistake already cost you? Not in theory, in reality. Which relationships have crumbled under its weight? Which chances have slipped past while you told yourself you'd do better next time? Which part of you, your joy, your ambition, your self-trust, has grown weaker every time you let it happen again? There is no such thing as a harmless repetition. Every choice you make is either carving a path towards liberation or digging a deeper trench into familiarity. And the consequences extend beyond just you. When you repeat mistakes, you teach others how to treat you. When you tolerate your own self-abandonment, others feel permitted to do the same. You set the tone. You define the standard. You become the silent architect of your own disappointment. Even more terrifying, your mistakes become inherited. What you don't heal, you pass on, emotionally, behaviorally, energetically. Your children, your friends, your partners, they absorb the lessons you model, even when you don't say them aloud. Every time you repeat a mistake, you're not just affecting your life, you're contributing to the architecture of others' beliefs. And yet, this realization can be your awakening. Because if repetition can erode, it can also rebuild. If your patterns have written a painful story, they can also write a redemptive one. The moment you become conscious of your repetition, it loses its grip. It no longer hides in the dark, no longer directs you from the shadows. You see it, you name it, and in doing so, you reclaim your authorship. You are not bound by your past. You are bound only by the parts of your past you refuse to confront. And yes, confrontation is painful. It burns, it humbles you, but it also purifies. Think of it like emotional alchemy, the transformation of repeated mistakes into conscious wisdom. But here's the paradox. Acknowledging consequences is not the same as dwelling in guilt. Guilt keeps you stuck in shame. But awareness? That's power. That's fuel. That's the energy required to break the cycle for good. So here's the task. List your repeated mistake. Just one. Write it down. Then, in full detail, document its cost. Not just the immediate regret, but the cumulative erosion, the lost trust, the wasted time, the emotional energy, the part of you that started believing you couldn't change. And then, imagine a life where this mistake is gone, erased, transcended. What opens up? What becomes possible? What version of you emerges in its absence? This vision isn't a fantasy. It's a preview. But only if you choose to act. The cycle ends when you say it ends, not because you hope it will, not because someone else fixes it, but because you make the brave, consistent decision to own it, understand it, and rewrite it. In the next section, we'll step into the fire of transformation, the rebellion, the counterintuitive truths and radical shifts you must embrace to break the cycle for good. But before we go there, reflect deeply on this. What will your life look like if you don't change this? And what are you willing to do, finally, to change it? If repetition is a prison, rebellion is the escape. But don't mistake rebellion for noise or drama. This rebellion isn't loud. It's not some cinematic overhaul of your life in a single, defiant act. Number the rebellion that breaks the cycle of self-sabotage is quiet, intentional, and deeply personal. It's made not in public declarations, but in private decisions over and over again. Because here's the paradox. The most radical change often begins with the smallest refusal. You refuse to send the text. You refuse to make the excuse. You refuse to betray yourself again, not out of punishment, but out of reverence for who you could become if you stopped letting history repeat itself. Let's be clear, this rebellion isn't about fixing yourself. You are not broken. You are patterned. And those patterns, while familiar, are not fate. They are programmable, which means they are also reprogrammable. But reprogramming doesn't happen through willpower alone. It happens through clarity, contradiction, and commitment. Clarity is the first weapon. You must stop pretending not to know. Most of the time, you do know when you're about to make the same mistake again. That brief flash of tension in your chest, that tiny hesitation before you speak, that whisper in your gut saying, "Not this again." And yet, you override it. Why? Because you don't trust it. You've trained yourself to override your inner truth in favor of emotional comfort, social approval, or fleeting pleasure. This is the pattern. This is the cycle. And this is the precise moment where rebellion must begin. Clarity means paying attention to your early warning signs. Every pattern has them. The uh-oh moments, the split seconds where the door to a different outcome is still open. That's your entry point. Miss it, and you fall back into the loop. Catch it, and you interrupt history. But clarity alone isn't enough. Contradiction is the second weapon. You must deliberately do the thing that contradicts your old programming. If you're used to shutting down, speak up. If you tend to chase, stay still. If you usually lash out, pause and breathe. This will feel wrong at first, not because it is wrong, but because it's unfamiliar. And your brain equates unfamiliarity with danger. So here's the truth no one wants to hear. Real change will feel like self-betrayal at first. Let that sink in. Doing what's healthy may feel like you're betraying your old self, because in a way, you are. You're betraying the version of you that survived by repeating, avoiding, and justifying. And that version of you, while resilient, is not meant to lead your future. This is the cost of transformation, letting the old self grieve while the new self takes the wheel. There will be resistance. Your mind will scream, "This isn't me. This feels wrong. This won't work." But remember, resistance is not proof of failure. It's proof that your old wiring is being challenged. It's the sound of your psychological walls cracking open to let new possibilities in. And now, we arrive at the final weapon: commitment. Not motivation, not emotion, commitment. Because, let's be honest, emotion is unreliable. Some days you'll feel powerful. Other days you'll feel like a fraud. You'll want to slip back into the known, the comfortable, the repeatable. This is when commitment matters most. It's the internal contract you write with your future self. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, I will not go back. So how do you enforce this commitment when the pull of the past feels overwhelming? You build a structure around your rebellion. You create friction around your old patterns. Block the number. Delete the app. Schedule accountability check-ins. Set reminders that hit you in your weakest moments with your strongest truths. You create momentum around your new patterns. Celebrate the smallest win. Track your progress visually. Speak your new identity aloud. I am someone who keeps their word to themselves. This isn't about pretending to be perfect. It's about refusing to be unconscious. Every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you chip away at the old identity. Every time you follow through, even when it's inconvenient, you rewire your brain for integrity. Every time you resist the easy way out, you prove to yourself that the past no longer holds the pen. And here's the wild, liberating truth. This rebellion scales. Once you break one cycle, you realize they're all connected. The pattern that made you procrastinate is tied to the one that kept you in toxic relationships. The self-doubt that blocked your creativity is rooted in the same soil as the habit of over-apologizing. Pull one thread and watch the whole tapestry begin to unravel. But don't expect applause. The world will not immediately congratulate you for changing. In fact, many will resist your growth. Why? Because your evolution threatens their stagnation. The moment you stop repeating your cycles, you become a mirror. You reflect back to others the possibility of change, and that terrifies them. Let them be afraid. That's not your burden to carry. Because here's the paradoxical reward. Once you stop needing others to validate your growth, you become unstoppable. You will lose some people, but you'll gain something far greater: self-respect. And that is the foundation of everything. Self-respect is what keeps you from returning to the mistake. It's what whispers, "Not anymore," when the old temptation comes calling. It's what builds a future so compelling that the past no longer holds its appeal. So pause now, breathe, ask yourself, what is the smallest, most powerful rebellion I can commit to today? What is one thing I do differently? Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. Then do it. And track how it feels. Not just emotionally, but spiritually. Notice how every conscious choice creates a crack in the walls of the old you. That's how the light gets in. That's how the cycle breaks. That's how you begin again. In the final section, we'll step into the ultimate truth, the profound, poetic realization that makes all the struggle worth it. The revelation that transforms not just your habits, but your identity. But before we go there, ask yourself with fierce honesty, who do I become when I no longer repeat the mistake? And are you ready to meet that version of you? There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when something shifts. Not dramatically, not with trumpets or lightning, but gently, deeply, irrevocably. You realize you're not the same person who used to make that mistake. You don't crave the old chaos. You don't feel the urge to explain, to justify, to perform your old role in the same tired play. The hunger to repeat, it's gone, not because it vanished on its own, but because you starved it. You no longer feed it with attention, reaction, or fear. This is the final truth. The one that hides behind every repeated mistake, every painful cycle, every late-night self-promise that this time will be different. You were never trying to stop the mistake. You were trying to find yourself beneath it. All along, every repetition was your subconscious trying to return you to something sacred, something original. A forgotten version of you that existed before the patterns, before the programming, before the world handed you scripts and masks and called it reality. And now, you're starting to remember. This remembering isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It lives in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you hold yourself when no one's watching, in the way you say no, not out of fear, but out of sovereignty. Because the ultimate truth isn't that mistakes are bad. The truth is, mistakes are mirrors. They reflect where you've abandoned yourself. And when you stop repeating them, it's not because you've become perfect, but because you've finally come home. Home to a self who doesn't need to chase validation. Home to a self who no longer clings to chaos just to feel alive. Home to a self who trusts that peace isn't boring, it's earned. But let's be clear. This version of you isn't built on avoidance. You didn't escape the cycle by running from it. You walked through it, eyes open, heart pounding, voice shaking. You faced your own darkness, not to destroy it, but to reclaim what it had stolen. You stood where the mistake usually lives and didn't flinch. That's power, not bravado, not perfection. Power, the quiet kind, the real kind, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything because it remembers. And from that remembering comes transformation. Real transformation. Not the new year, new me kind. Not the highlight reel, but cellular, spiritual, enduring change. The kind that isn't about being different. It's about being honest. Finally, completely, unapologetically. This honesty means you're no longer afraid of slipping up. Why? Because now, even failure has meaning. Even falling off track isn't failure, it's feedback. And you listen differently now. You hear your inner signals not as threats, but as guidance. You speak to yourself not with shame, but with responsibility. Because now you know, self-forgiveness isn't letting yourself off the hook. It's putting yourself on the path again and again without punishing the part of you that's still learning. This is the new rhythm, not perfection, but repair. Over and over, gently, fiercely. You become someone who trusts their own recovery. Someone who can hold contradiction. Yes, I've made this mistake. And no, I won't live there anymore. Can you feel the weight of that? That's not ego. That's not self-help fluff. That's integration. You're no longer running from the version of you who couldn't get it right. You're holding their hand and walking them home. You're saying, I've got us now. That's the ultimate rebellion. That's the ultimate truth. And maybe, just maybe, you realize this entire journey, every repeated mistake, every unraveling, every breakdown, wasn't punishment. It was invitation. An invitation to remember who you were before the world told you to be someone else, before the pattern, before the conditioning, before the fear. And now you get to live from that remembering. Not as someone constantly dodging mistakes, but as someone who knows who they are in the face of them. Someone who doesn't collapse when history calls, but answers, that version of me doesn't live here anymore. So, what does that life look like? It looks like boundaries that don't require explanations. It looks like mornings without shame. It looks like decisions that don't taste like regret. It looks like loving people without losing yourself. It looks like building a life so rich with purpose, there's no longer room for your old coping mechanisms to squeeze in. And above all, it looks like walking forward, not because you hate your past, but because you've outgrown it. So take one final breath here. In this moment of truth, you've dissected the pattern. You've unearthed the root. You've reckoned with the cost. You've declared the rebellion. And now, you've remembered who you were always becoming. Let this be your closing mantra, your silent vow, your whispered declaration. I am no longer a collector of regrets. I am the architect of what comes next. Because you are not here to repeat. You are here to evolve. And you already have.